and the beer school, the famous Cicero's and the famous beer school. Hey, applause to y'all. Thank you so much for allowing me to get up here. Again, my name is Woody. I am a market manager with Green Flash, and Missouri and St. Louis is part of my territory. I live in Austin, Texas. So usually I get kicked out when I say that, but anyway, I do West Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri. So I have a pretty big market, and I'm very thankful to be here. Let's see, it started for me in the music industry. My wife and I owned a live music venue in Austin, Texas from 2000 to 2005. And actually, I know a lot of bands that play here at Cicero. So it's exciting for me to be on this stage on both the beer end and the music end. But at that time, in 2000, we were the first live music venue to hold all three flavors of a local brewery called Real Ale on. We had their Pale Ale, their Full Moon Pale Rye, and their Brewhouse Brown. So that kind of got me into the craft beer world. Our distributors come in and like, hey, why do you have that brown on? Why don't you put a Newcastle? I'm like, well, I like these guys. I think they make a great beer. And they were the cutting edge of the Austin craft beer scene. From there, my wife and I sold our bar and opened up a restaurant, and I had no business opening a restaurant and it failed in a year and a half. So what I did the day we closed, I called Brad Farbstein, who is the owner of Real Ale. And we became good friends over the years, and he hired me immediately that day as a bottling production manager. So I would get to the brewery at 5 in the morning and hook up the filler to the bright tank and bottle all day long. At that time, it was completely manual. We'd open up our own six-pack carriers. We make our own mother cartons, run them through the taper, mess with the whole labeler, and it was a nightmare. And I did that for 2 years, and I loved it, but ultimately it's glorified warehouse work. So as I'm in there sweating with the same shirtless, bearded guys I would see every day, our two reps at the time would come in with their, golf bags, and oh man, tough day. And I'm like, I could do that job, And so I'm like, man, that job is easy. So I didn't have the opportunity there. At that time, a retail account called The Whip-In. If you know of Austin, and if you know beer, you may have heard The Whip-In. That is a 400 package to go, 77 taps on the wall, nano brewery. The first year there, when they had their nano brewery, they had a urban spice beer called Bitter Rama, and it won a gold medal at GABF. And the following year won a silver medal at World Beer Cup. So it was kind of a big deal that this little Sabco system that we would produce beer out of a air-conditioned well won a gold and a silver at two highly prestigious competitions. So I was managing that place, getting in more into the beer. I learned more about the Belgians, the Germans. At the same time, the local and regional craft beer scene was really blowing up. And I was getting up in age. I was tired of closing a place down at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, well, maybe now is the time to start pursuing this rep gig. From there, I met Gidon Call, who is the owner of Original Sin Cider, which ironically enough is distributed through Major Brands, our current distributor. And he hired me as a sales rep. I was one of 6 people that he hired that month. He fired everyone else and kept me on. And I took over Texas, Arkansas, North Carolina, and Missouri. And so my first trip to St. Louis was as an Original Sin rep. This was going on, I guess, about 5 years ago. From Original Sin, I had an opportunity to go work at Rogue as a sales rep. I did that for a cup of coffee, and then this wonderful opportunity with Green Flash Brewing Company came along. So I jumped on Green Flash. I will always remember my very first West Coast IPA. It was when I was working at Real Ale, and we were coming up with our own IPA. And our brewmaster would set us aside and do blind taste tests of all, at that time, about 8 different IPAs, some Colorado, some California, a couple Oregons. And when I had my blind taste test of West Coast IPA, I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. This beer is head and shoulders above all the rest. From there, I went on to Hophead Red, and that was my first introduction to Green Flash Brewing. So that was... I would say about 7 years ago is when I had my first West Coast. Didn't think anything of it. I would buy, a 4-pack here, a 4-pack Hophead Red, get some Rayon Vert. But then when the opportunity came to Green Flash, I'm like, I'm jumping on it because I remember my very first time at West Coast IPA. So as a salesman, I love selling the beer that I represent. I am proud. I don't think we have a dog in any one of our whole roster of beer. But as a salesman, I come up and I come across people that go, oh, I don't like IPAs. And they kind of threw me off. It's like, Who doesn't like IPAs? If you're like my age, you probably have seen the movie Dune, which is David Lynch's first movie, and Sting was in it, and Kyle MacLachlan or somebody was in it. But basically, these people go to this spice planet and harvest spice, and their eyes turn blue, and they get like the weirding way going on. That's what happened to me with hops when I was at Real Ale. You know, you smell it in the boil, and it gets all into your senses, and you just become a hophead. But I automatically assumed everybody was a hophead then. And so when I'm sitting at a tasting table and people go, I don't like IPAs, it blows my mind. Or if I'm at a beer festival and there's a 40-minute line of people and they wait all in that line, they come up to me and they're like, well, what do you have that's not hoppy? And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, girlfriend. Yeah, we don't have, we're all hoppy beers here. So there was a time of limitation with Green Flash because of that. But now I'm excited because we're expanding. Green Flash merged with a company called Apline Beer Company. Has anybody ever heard of Apline? Good. It's a small esoteric brewery out in Alpine, California. And they were known for their hop-forward beers as well. So we merged with them. So there's all this wonderful opportunity now for us to introduce Alpine beer to the rest of the country. And actually, one of the beers that we'll be sampling today is an Alpine Beer Company. Another great part of Green Flash that's growing right now is we came up with our own independent barrel-aged cellaring facility. So we took all our wild yeast, all our Brettanomyces yeast, and we put it in a separate facility away from our main production facility so it doesn't corrupt our main production yeast. So if you're ever in San Diego, California, you can visit 3 different facilities from Green Flash. You have Alpine Brew Pub in Alpine, California, our Cellar 3 facility in Poway, California, and then also Mira Mesa's main production facility. Another exciting thing in our future is our second brewery. Does anyone know that we are opening up a second brewery this year? Yes, awesome. So we do have a Green Flash fan. That's great. So a true lifer here. So our current production at Green Flash is about 100% production capacity. At the same time, we're opening up a second brewery in Virginia Beach, Virginia. It should be open second quarter. So let me give you a little bit backstory about Green Flash Brewing Company. We are...
Sorry to interrupt, but how big is the system? I mean, how much do you guys bring now, and how much are you going to be able to brew when you open the second?
Yes, that's a great question. Our current capacity in California is 100,000 barrels. So in 2015, which what I was going to get to, is at 96,000 barrels. We're basically 100,000 barrel capacity right now. The one in Virginia Beach will initially start as a 30,000 barrel brewing, and that will satisfy the East Coast. And then once that bumps up to 30,000, we'll expand to up to 100,000 barrels. So Green Flash started in 2002. It's owned by Mike and Lisa Hinckley. They were restaurant goers, owners, and then they decided to open up a brewery. So between 2002 and 2004, Green Flash was making your typical ESBs, pales, ambers. And, it's pretty competitive, that San Diego market, so they really weren't getting any traction or any type of velocity going on. So a great thing happened. Chuck Silva joined. Mike hired Chuck Silva, who was our head brewmaster from 2004 until just this past year. Chuck left our brewery right after GABF, and he's starting his own brewery in Northern California. Him and his wife are moving back to where he was born and raised, and they're starting their own brewery. So what we did is we promoted Eric Jensen, who's been our head brewer for the last 4 years, as our brewmaster. And so we're very excited for that. He has the knowledge and the experience of working with Chuck, plus he has the vision and the foresight to move Green Flash into the future. And now we're talking about the future. This is a very different approach for Green Flash than the past. What you have in your hand right now is called Passion Fruit Kicker. It is actually a wheat beer produced by Green Flash. Initially, if you get on the nose, what you will smell is white tea. So we use a passion fruit puree after the boil, but we also administer white tea in it, similar to like dry hopping. So on the nose, you actually get a little bit of white tea. It's a great nose. And then as you take a sip, you'll taste that puree. It's a very effervescent, very easy, very clean beer. If you are a Green Flash, you'll almost be like, whoa, this is Green Flash making a wheat. This beer is actually a 5 IBU beer, which I thought was like a misprint when I first saw it. I'm like, what, 5 IBUs? Don't you mean 105 IBUs? But no, this is a 5 IBU beer. And so what is this going to do for Green Flash? Well, this will open up a lot of markets for us. This will open up a lot of opportunity. Fruited beers, in my mind personally, is for the summer of 2016 is basically like the Goza's Berliner Weisses of 2014 and 2015, the summertime beer. Not only you'll see us doing a fruited wheat, we also have a fruited IPA. You'll see very many different choices of fruited beers coming out this year. And this is our foray into a wheat beer. So I'm very excited. So these lines of 40-minute people coming up to me and go, oh, we don't like IPAs. Well, here's a world-class wheat beer that is dry hopped with white tea and has a whole fruit puree administered to it. Enjoy. You could pound this, you could crush this, and drink many of them. It's 5.5% alcohol, 5 IBUs. If you're, writing down stats. So I am very, very excited about this beer. I hope y'all enjoy it. One thing to focus on, please focus on the finish. The craftsmanship of Green Flash has always been a clean, dry finish, no matter what. No matter how big our beers is, whether it's Pallet Wrecker, Green Bullet, West Coast IPA, no matter how many IBUs are in it, we always have a clean, dry finish. White Labs yeast production facility, anybody ever heard of White Labs? Yes, right? So White Labs is world known for their yeast production. They pretty much supply the entire California, probably 85% of the market now throughout the country is White Labs yeast. They're actually building a second production facility in Asheville, North Carolina. And so it's a very efficient yeast. The water in San Diego is very mineral rich, right? It enables the yeast to become very efficient. The craftsman of our brewing team allows us to make a very either hoppy beer that's completely balanced with malts but a clean, dry finish, or now a pureed beer with actual whole fruit puree, not fruit concentrate, not fruit juice, but a puree with tea and still finish clean and dry. So you get a little tart, a little sweet, you get the great effervescence, you get the great nose, and then a clean, dry finish. I think this beer is a complete home run. Yes. Straight from San Diego. It's a reservoir, an aquifer. It's basically all our water in all of San Diego is through an aquifer. So we don't have the water issues yet of the Northern California, of the Central California. And knock on wood, I don't believe we ever will. But yes, it's directly from San Diego. You look at San Diego as a beer city in general. Over 150 breweries. Been doing it forever. If you look at us, we're the 4th largest by volume in San Diego alone. We're a top 50 brewery. 2014, we did 68,000 barrels. This past year, we're doing 96,000 barrels. And we're still the 4th largest by volume. So you're looking at the Stones, the Ballast Points, Karl Strauss, and then Green Flash. And then there's so many other breweries. What's different about San Diego than a lot of towns is the dive bar has 40 amazing tap selections. The country bar, 40 amazing. The crazy dance bar, 40 amazing. The craft cocktail bar, 40 amazing. And that's what enables San Diego breweries to stay competitive, to stay alive, to stay innovative. This is a great multi-tap account, has been for years. You have your flying saucers. You have all these big multi-taps. But when it comes down to every little bar, every style of bar, when they start having 40 taps, that's when it's like, wow, this can sustain itself. So that's very exciting.
So I have a question for you, Woody. So what's the difference between the people in San Diego and the people in St. Louis? Because obviously that kind of a system can sustain the breweries, but how does it sustain the pubs?
Yeah, well, I think y'all have an amazing craft beer scene. You have the Total Geek with Perennial, and then what is it now? Side Project is there Neil Count?
I'm not saying we don't have good beer here. I'm just saying the difference between what you're talking about, San Diego, is quite different than what we have here.
St. Louis, obviously a historic beer town, and I think you fight a little bit of your history and your culture, where the thumb is the long shadow of the crown is a good quote. That, yeah. Generally, I would say that, but I think, it's a thriving independent craft beer scene, Schlafly is the largest Missouri-owned brewery now in Missouri, I remember when I was I believe with Original Sin, I would fly into Kansas City, and there was a little dig from Boulevard saying, welcome to Kansas, on a billboard, welcome to Kansas City, home of Boulevard Brewery. Missouri's the largest independently owned brewery. And then I always wondered when I go back if it would say Missouri's second largest Belgian-owned brewery, So who knows? But I love Urban Chestnut. Four Hands. My personal favorite, when I was with Original Sin, I believe his name is Jake, Civil Life. I love that brewery. So, I bonded with him. There was very larger-than-life personalities on this bus that we did tastings from Kansas City to St. Louis, and they were very larger than life, and I was like kind of reserved. Well, this gentleman was real reserved. So we kind of bonded and talked, and he's like, yeah, this little brewery, little brew pub called Civil Life. So I went to visit it, and the beer is amazing. All the Tangerine beer is amazing. My personal favorite was that bologna sandwich with the the pretzel bun. Oh my God, that was awesome. Like, that's what I think about. So I'm a big fan of Civil Life. I like what y'all are doing a lot here. But as a regional brewer who is, I'm pretty, like I said, I'm pretty proud of our beer. I don't think we have a dog. I try and stress the terroir of the region. I think a great account should have great local representation. And I'm talking beyond styles or genres. Great local representation, but you also need to have great regionals. Whether it's California, Oregon, a Colorado, a Michigan, now all these new school East Coast breweries are popping up. To be a complete retail account or a complete on-premise account, I think you have to have great local and you have to represent great regional. I'm all about rotating handles. I'm all about rotating styles, but I think you also have to represent the country as a whole to be a great craft bar. San Diego is a little tough, right? Because all these little divey bars have 40 taps, but I guarantee you 37 of them are local. So it happens everywhere. Austin. Austin thinks they're real cool with their local craft beer scene. Of course, we have like Jester King and 512 and Independence. And it's like, dude, how do you separate yourself? Because all you have are locals on, It's like you have to think outside to bring more people in now. 5-7 years ago, maybe not. You could have been like, hey, I have local only. Now everybody has local, so now you have to like separate yourself from regionals. I also kind of want to talk about like new school IPAs. I think that today's IPA drinker is different than the IPA drinker of 3 years ago. I think the new IPA is what I consider a softer IPA. Instead of using straight two-row pale malt, little caramelized malt, I think they're using a lot more of the Pilsner malts, the Maris Otter malts, the the low IBU, high hop attack, high hop nose. Alpine Beer Company, which again is a company that we merged with, they were kind of the masters of that 12 years ago. Well, let's talk a little bit about Alpine. Again, it's a small 7-barrel system. It's owned by Pat McElhenney, and him and his wife went over to New Zealand for a little vacation, and he stumbled onto a hop farm, and he found the Nelson Sauvin hop. And so if you have heard of Alpine, you've probably heard of the Nelson IPA. So he was the first person to bring a New Zealand hop over to America. He was so successful with that hop that the bigger breweries started using it, the New Belgiums, the Widmers, and he basically priced himself out of that hop. And so part of our handshake agreement merger is to use our buying clout to buy more of that hop so we can make more of that beer.
Before we move on, how many people thought the kicker was awesome? Like, honestly, if you didn't, don't raise your hand. It's okay.
Right.
80% of the class thinks it's awesome.
That's good because
Like it at all. Be honest. Okay.
it is totally okay because I have big IPAs to help. Yeah, and that's what's amazing. That's why it's a good time for me with Green Flash. It's a great time to be with Green Flash because we still have our claim with all our big, bold beers, and we're coming out with a bunch of new big, bold beers, whether it's our Ristretto Baltic Porter, whether it's our Serrano Double Stout, whether it's our Alpine collection, but it's great for us to expand and have a great beer like the Passion Fruit Kicker. So I hope y'all did enjoy it. I know I do. So do y'all have any other questions right now? Anyone? Bueller? Okay. So we talked a little bit about Alpine. We talked a little bit about Cellar 3. I do want to emphasize that we are fiercely independent. We will stay that way in this age of mergers and acquisitions. We'll see how long we last. But it's scary, like when our neighbor, like Ballast Point, gets bought out, or Lagunitas, gets bought out, or Firestone Walker gets bought out. I mean, that's a big deal. I don't think it'll change the beer or the philosophy of the brewery, but it does give them a lot more muscle to get the shelf space, to get the promotion, to get the beer out there. And so as a mid-tier brewery like us, we'll definitely face those pressures. We'll also have the pressures of the newer brands coming in and putting pressure on the bottom to be the new shiny penny. So, we try and stay innovative. This beer here is part of our innovation. Again, it's a fruited beer. It's Tangerine Soul Style. Who has our base Soul Style beer before? Just our single IPA. Yes. So Soul Style was released last year, and it was a major part of our growth this past year. Tangerine Soul Style will be the same thing. This is a Citric Cascade hop IPA, 6.5% alcohol, 75 IBUs. What we do, we don't use concentrate, we don't use juice. We get whole tangerines, and just like our passion fruit kicker, we make a puree out of it. So on the nose itself, what I get mostly is the zest of the tangerine, right? It's not an artificial nose. It's not an artificial tangerine. It's the pure zest of the tangerine. You take your sip, and you get a little bit of the zest on the initial attack. It marriages very well with the Citric Cascade hop. Finishes clean and dry again as a fruited beer. It is not synthetic. It doesn't have juice in it. It doesn't have concentrate. It's not overly sweet. It's still a very dry beer considering it's a fruited IPA. I'm sure y'all have had grapefruit sculpin. I think, who does the local grapefruit? Is it Four Hands does a grapefruit? Schlafly does the grapefruit. I think some of the bigger breweries like New Belgium has a Tangerine IPA. And if you ever have an opportunity to do a side-by specifically with the Tangerine IPA, I would highly recommend it. That way you could definitely tell the difference between a zest puree as opposed to a juice or a concentrate. Oh, you do? Awesome. So I'm going to do a side-by after this event. Yeah, please do. Let's all do it now. Yes. Actually, that's what I heard. They like picking up my tab whenever I stumble out. Yeah. So any questions about this beer? Any questions about Eric as our new brewmaster? Any questions about Chuck Silva leaving and going on? Let's talk a little bit about Chuck. So again, he was the face and the brewmaster of Green Flash for about 10 years. He won, this year we won a gold medal at GABF with Lafrique, which is an Imperial IPA in Belgian yeast. He won a silver last year with that. Well, when he won a gold medal this year, the very next day, he's like, Mike, we're going to go. My wife and I were going to move on, and we're going to do our dream. We're going to open up our own brewery. And Mike knew all along that that day would come. And so that's part of the reason why Eric has been head brewer for 4 years. So we have a smooth transition, which is great, is Eric's bringing these type of innovations along with us, whether it's the passion fruit, whether it's the Serrano Stout. We're really big into, even that Serrano Stout, we're really big into creating a puree. And that way you could administer it past boil where you could actually control how much you put in so it's not overpowering. It's more of a layer of flavors. And so that's very important to us. So, yeah, I'm thinking this will be a good summertime beer. What do y'all think of Tangerine Soul Style? Yeah? Yeah, exactly. And that's more of the zest. Who said that? Yeah, so that it's more of the zest that you get. Mm-hmm. Do y'all like fruited IPAs? You could see you drinking this and when it's 95 degrees outside? Yeah. Yeah. Meh. Mm-hmm. Right. So this middle row here of guys, like, where do y'all go to drink? What's y'all's trends in drinking? Y'all are natty lights that just stumbled into Cicero's beer school. Yeah, I believe that. Yeah. Honestly, I'll drink a room temperature beer over a very cold beer. There's a place there, there's a place in Austin that serves frozen mugs still, and I hate even selling my beer in there. It's like you're killing the taste right there. How many of y'all been to GABF before? Well, yeah. Well, Jill, of course, raises her hand. So I would highly recommend, put that on your bucket list. Have any of y'all been to Belgium before? Right on. Anyone of y'all, did y'all ever go to the Delirium Cafe? You've been to Delirium? That's on my bucket list. So, Delirium Cafe is this great beer bar. It's been there forever. It's a 3-story bar by Delirium. And the very top is the IPA attic. So you could go up there and have all worldwide IPAs, including a lot of great American IPAs. And they come out with a book this thick of their menu every year. So that's one place I want to go to. I don't know. They have great volume, you know. I guess that's how they keep it fresh. We do produce West Coast IPA over in Belgium with Saint Foyen. They actually produce the beer there and distribute throughout Europe, which is exciting. Stone is building their Berlin brewery now, and so we'll be the only 2 American beers that you could buy fresh IPAs there. So that's really cool. Urban Chestnut, they have a brewery going on in Europe. That is awesome. I'm learning something from beer school. Yeah. So is that up and online right now? Yeah. Do you know what part of Germany? Wow. So it's pretty. They're a weird kind of brewery, like that 9-pack. What? Europacks. Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of cool. Really? Yeah, milk, beer. Yeah. So I believe we're moving on to my favorite beer. Oh, you did? Okay. Two. And it's okay, you won't hurt my feelings. I didn't brew the beer. Right on, apathy. Oh, yeah, no. No, I'm excited. I've had Citradelic. I had like a 2-ounce sample of it, and it's been a while, but I haven't had a side-by. So I'm excited. There's a Pace magazine came out with an article that did a side-by with us, and they rated both of them pretty high. They rated ours slightly higher, and they're just saying ours is a little bit drier. Theirs was a little bit sweeter. Our hops come out a little bit more. It's more of a natural tangerine flavor. Yes? Mm. Yep. Yep. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, what I think, go beyond that. That's why I was talking about our yeast and our water. It enables us to overhop but balance with malts and still leave a clean, dry finish. So we'll always have a malt backbone. We won't have like a hop bomb, or we won't have such an over malt where it gives you like a thickness or a film, and that's because of our brewing process and the water and the yeast. We will even with this one, West Coast IPA, right? 95 IBUs, 8.1%. We use 2.5 pounds of hops, the 4Cs, Cascade, Centennial, Citra, Columbus, dry hop with Simcoe. We still have caramelized malts, 2-row pale malt in here, a little bit of Maris Otter in here, and that gives you a little bit of a malt complexity to it. Again, this is West Coast IPA. Other breweries will say West Coast style. We coined the term 10 years ago, West Coast IPA. It is the prototypical old school IPA. It's 95 IBUs, 8.1%. Huge hop nose. You get that nice darker, SRM. It comes in about 12 or 13, and that comes with a little bit of caramelized malts. That comes with the 2-row pale. Again, it's a strong malt backbone that balances the beer. You take a sip. Right? You get the hop nose, the hop attack, but what's the finish? You get a little bit of the sweetness from the malt. Finish is clean and dry. So when other breweries say West Coast style IPA or West Coast, whatever, West Coast style, they are trying to recreate this. We put our hop build on every one of our labels. We're not scared to put, we use Cascade, we use Citra, we use Centennial, we use Columbus, we use Simcoe on this. Go ahead, try and make layer and layer and layer of hops in your brewing procedure. This is what we do. Try and recreate this. We continuously hop this beer throughout the entire process of this beer. It's not like a 2-hop process. It's a continuously 2.5 pounds of hops per barrel in this beer. And historically, we are in the upper echelon of the price point, but quite simply, there's less water in our beer. There's more ingredients in our beer. You know what I mean? So you get what you pay for on that. This beer tastes super fresh to me. I don't know when it landed, but this is a great beer. This was my inspiration to come into work for Green Flash right here. And I've talked to many people throughout the country, and they love this beer. I love the fact that we're a top 50 brewer, and we did that without a lager or an amber or a blonde. We did that. Our flagship is a double IPA. And not a lot of breweries can say that. And so I'm very proud of that. When was y'all's first IPA? Your first West Coast. Do y'all remember when you had this beer for the first time? So Nate was here. Nate in 2013 did Cicero's, and he's still with our company. He's moved up. He was started as a rep in Colorado, and he covered Missouri at the time. He was one of 5 reps, I believe, that we had at that time. So we've kind of grown over the last 3 years. He is now a national accounts manager, which is good. We have Rick Lasaggi, who is our big national accounts manager, and we just promoted Nate to, Rick's going to guide him into that. And that's such a very important element of our brewery. The growth is a lot of growth are through chains, and it's all that personal relationship. And it's nice to have more than one person because you get overwhelmed. Just think of your chain accounts here, and then couple that throughout the whole country. In Texas, for instance, we have H-E-B's, 4th largest grocery chain throughout the entire country, and they're only in Texas. And so they're very important to us. So Rick would come down to the state, and he'll do his meeting, and then we get into the spring set. And if we ever lose that set, we lose a lot of business. So it's great. Nate is a great speaker. He's very knowledgeable, very passionate about our brewery, and it's nice to see him get promoted up through the system. Let's see. Anything else? Great. That's a great question. So it's a weather anomaly. It's during perfect conditions when the sun is setting on the Pacific coast. I hear sometimes in Florida you could see this, but as the sun's setting with no wind and perfect conditions, right when it sets, a flash of green light comes out. And so Mike and Lisa, they're sitting there. They're always been a big fan of the Anomaly Green Flash, and so they decide to name their brewery after that. It's basically a flash of genius. And so that's where the inspiration for Green Flash came from. So that's where our name derives from. Yes? That's a year-round product. It's available in 22 ounce only. Now it is also available in draft. I love the Serrano Stout. I wish we could sample it. It is the same puree theory. We de-seed, de-stem, make a puree of the Serrano, and as opposed to other pepper beers that are lagers or IPAs, a stout could actually have the complexity to make it another flavor profile. It's similar to spicy, sweet, whatever, chocolates, you know? It just adds another layer. So the Serrano will give you the nose and a little tingle on the tongue, but it's not like an overly spiced beer. So yes, it is year-round. The Ristretto Baltic Porter is also year-round, both available in 22 ounce, both very high alcohol, and so they will be in select stores. The Ristretto Baltic Porter is a high-end Italian espresso coffee in a Baltic Porter. That's, I believe, an 8.2% beer. Very big, very flavorful, very turbocharged. I wouldn't recommend drinking it at like 12 o'clock at night, or you will stay up from the coffee. I love that Serrano Stout. I actually won we did a thing for the Super Bowl where it was me and 7 other supplier reps. We made a soup or a chili or a gumbo with our beer, and I won. I made a 5-alarm chili. I use a lot of poblano pepper, Serrano, habanero, jalapenos, and poured about 12 ounces of that beer in it, and it crushed. It was great. It was nice. We beat a Bourbon County Stout chili with it, so I was like, yeah, you know. Any questions about Mike or Lisa? I mean, we're definitely independent like that, and I can't stress that enough in this time. Yeah.
Well, the owner of the Apline, Mike.
Pat Mickelhenny. Uh-huh.
Is he related to the Tabasco people?
Not that I know of, but that is a good question. I know he was I know he was a longtime fireman, and he was a brewer on just as a hobby, and then he started volunteering, I believe, at AleSmith. Now, I may be wrong at that. And then he started on his side, he started contract brewing his Irish Red there. And that's what really kind of got the buzz going for him. And then off of that, he enabled to open up his own little brew pub in Alpine, California. So we're real excited to merge with Alpine. I can't stress that enough. What y'all are getting poured right now is a beer called Pure Hoppiness. And this uses what's called a hop back. And so we had to convert our system to add this huge hop back. A hop back is essentially a Randall. So during the whole brewing process, we put whole flower hops into this Randall in this huge boiler, and the beer continuously flows through this hop back. As opposed to like dry hopping, you put a bunch of hops in a sock, it gets saturated with beer, and then it sinks to the bottom. This method, there's a lot more surface area coming through. The beer is touching a lot more of the hops at the time. Okay, it's basically a tube that connects that you could fill a Randall with anything. You could put mango in it, you could put anything, and the beer will funnel through that before it pours out. It filters right at the end and then pours out. You'll see some accounts that have Randalls, and they'll put either extra hops, mango. It's basically a shortcut into like a firkin, I guess. And so on a production level, it's called a hop back. And I guess essentially you could do the same thing. You could put fruit or whatever you want in that. But it's a huge, huge tube basically that connects to our brewing system. The only other brewery that I know that incorporates a hop back on a commercial level is Odell. Dogfish uses one as well, yeah.
So I was thinking about getting a little small one. We can actually hook it up here, like sort of between the cooler and the tap, and doing like a super big pizza and put stuff in that in there.
Pizza,
That'd be cool.
yeah. Get a Pizza D's Nuts Ale.
Like a super big pale ale.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Buffalo wing stout.
So Pure Hop here. This is Southern California's equivalent to Bell's Hop Slam. It's a once-a-year release. We do this once a year. You get it on the nose. We're talking about the hop back. Huge hop nose that just shoots right up into your nose. You get the darker hops that are used in this. It's not as bright or as piney or citrusy as West Coast. I get more of the darker green onion garlic hops, the earthier hops on this. You taste a little bit of that? Always on the finish. Again, we use a great malt bill on this. So there's a huge malt backbone to it. We use caramelized malt. We use two-row pale malt in this. So it's another big hop-forward beer, and it's a once-a-year drop. I know it's Hop Slam season now, and I always love doing side-bys. And so this is, you have Hop Slam as well, right? Yeah, this is the right place to do. So what do y'all think of this beer? Oh, I love this beer. With Alpine, you have Pure Hoppiness, you have Alpine Nelson, you have Alpine Duet. There's opportunities here in St. Louis to get all these beers. In fact, some of the other off-premise accounts may have 22-ounce bottles of Nelson right now. I know there was a very small allocation here in St. Louis, so if you ever see an Alpine Nelson, I would recommend it. All Alpine beer is not filtered. All Green Flash beer is not filtered. We use a centrifuge, essentially a huge whirlpool that just basically sucks out all the extra particles. It's non-filtered, so we're not filtering out any of the flavor. It's just a big whirlpool getting out all the particles. We do not pasteurize. Now there's talk about Cellar 3 with any bourbon barrel-aged beer. There's a lot of bugs living in the barrel-aged beer, so there is talk of pasteurizing any type of stouts that have been whiskey-aged. Now, our Brettanomyces, our wild yeast wine-aged beers, our wine-aged saison beers, we do not have to pasteurize, but we are talking about pasteurizing those stouts to keep any diacetyl or any unwanted flavor profiles. Yes? The hop build? Yes. A little El Dorado, Simcoe, Mosaic. I want to say a touch of Cascade, but I think you're getting the earth tones from that El Dorado. So our brewmaster currently is Eric Jensen. Our Cellar 3 cellar master is Pat Korn. Pat's kid Sean Mickelhenny is the brewmaster at Alpine Beer Company. So from 2013 when Nate was here, we were a 4-pack IPA brewery. In a short 3 years, we have 3 facilities now. We've merged with the world-class Alpine Beer Company. We have 3 different production facilities, and we're adding a 4th in Virginia Beach. The growth with our company has been controlled, but it's been pretty exciting and incredible. And again, we're not going out with lagers, ambers, or anything like that. Now it's exciting for us to actually do have a wheat. If passion fruit kicker, takes off and it does well, that will just help spur growth. So we're very excited in a super competitive world to even have the opportunity to discuss these beers here. I love the fact that we're relaunching or reintroducing our brand here in St. Louis with a great partner and in front of a knowledgeable group of people like y'all. I am nothing but optimistic. It is highly competitive out there. And just think of the larger breweries, there's multiple reps for smaller areas. We're still one rep for multiple areas. So you won't see me but maybe 3 times a year. But I'm so optimistic about the future. I think it's a great time to be a member of Green Flash. I'm proud and almost honored to be part of this company. And I hope you enjoy the beers. Just know that we're all passionate, from the ownership to our brewing team, to the sales force, to the marketing, to the production crew. I think we're all on board. Our saying is one team, one dream, and I honestly buy into it. I literally drink the Kool-Aid. So I am completely proud of this company, and as a genuine person, I'm not obviously truly a salesman, but I'm passionate about beer. And so I could go in and talk beer all day long. I don't think I could sell a widget, but I could talk about beer and bond with someone on a personal level, and then hopefully we create an art.